Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. Can you hear me? Am I
I can,
audible to
yeah.
you? So, how are you doing, Martin? How is
I'm fine.
everything?
I've got a bit of a cough. So if I have to cough, I'll have to just
No issues. No issues at all.
yeah,
Just
yeah, yeah.
how's life treating you now? Like, what are you
Oh,
doing these
fine.
days?
Yeah, yeah. I'm good.
First of all, thank you so much for doing this, Martin. It really
No
means a lot to me.
problem.
It really means a lot to me. So, I just want to say that just so that I don't go off track while having a conversation with you, I've written few questions that I want to
Okay.
address here. So, I might
Yeah.
be looking at them every now and then.
Okay.
But yeah, but I'll try my level best to keep this conversation as smooth and spontaneous as possible.
Okay. Sounds good.
That's great. That's great. So my first question to you is that you have been doing photography for like more than 50 years now, right? Do
That
you
is correct. Yes. I
That's correct.
started when I was a teenager, and my
Right.
grandfather was a very keen amateur photographer,
Mhm.
and he would take me out, he'd lend me a camera, we'd go out shooting film, process the film, make prints.
Right.
So by about the age of 13 or 14, I decided that's what I wanted to do. So
Mhm.
that's over 50 years ago now, and I've been a photographer ever since.
Right. So do you believe you have fulfilled the purpose of why you started doing photography, or do you think there was no purpose of such kind at all in the first place? Or it was
I mean,
just it's just a ever evolving process? What do you believe about that?
I fulfilled my ambition of being a photographer. I
Mhm.
can't believe that I'm paid, a decent living to do my hobby. This is an amazing achievement. And of course, as well as that, I've got, 55,000 images on the Magnum site. So I
Right.
have a whole archive of images about, in particular, I guess, my time in the UK. But,
Mhm.
I've photographed all around the world. I photographed in India, I photographed in Africa, I
Mhm.
photographed in Australia. I've had an amazing time traveling the world with my camera and taking pictures, and people pay me to do it.
Right. That's amazing. How have your experience been in India? Like you've been to
I
India.
love coming to India. It's a crazy country.
Mhm.
And I've been, maybe 12 times now. I first
Oh,
went when I was still doing black and white.
right.
That was in 85. And together with my wife, we went to different places. In particular, I remember going to Darjeeling, and I
Okay.
photographed the sort of, still then, it was really sort of rooted in the days of the Raj. And I
Right.
remember going to the Hilltop Club, and we've had fantastic times. I've also
Mhm.
had shows in India, and I've been to, all the great cities like Mumbai, Delhi. So I love going. So yes, I hope to get back there sometime soon.
And when was the last time you visited India?
It must have been 3 years ago. I was actually at the Delhi Art Fair, and
Okay.
there
Okay.
we had a stand, and I was taking pictures of people in the actual art fair and then
Mhm.
pinning them up straight away. So it was
Oh,
like a live event which they sponsored,
right.
and my gallery was there, also selling prints,
Mhm.
and it was a great way of meeting the public and really to sort of photograph the new Indian, middle classes. The
Right.
wealthy Indians who can go out and afford to buy art.
Right. And you have always been like attracted towards the middle class section of society. Is that right?
Um, no, I mean, I've done all kinds of classes. I mean,
Mhm.
for me, India is fascinating because, of course, in the time that I've been photographing there, it's
Right.
become richer and more wealthy, and
Mhm.
that's something I've always enjoyed trying to photograph. So I remember maybe gate crashing the Polo Club in
Mhm.
Delhi and
Right.
photographing there, and
Mhm.
that's where you see the nouveau riche of India, which is a sort of newly defined class, and it's
Mhm.
fascinating for me.
And India must have been going through that transition period at that time, right?
Absolutely, yes. So when I first went in '85, it was a lot poorer than when I last went in 2019. So yes,
Right.
a huge transformation.
Right, right. That's correct. So I want to take you back to your like early years. Like, tell me, how did you get into photography? How did
Well,
it happen to you?
as I mentioned before, it was my
Mm,
grandfather. Then I
mm,
went to study photography at Manchester Polytechnic for
right.
3 years between 1970 and 1973. And
Mm,
after I did that, I moved a year or so later to Hebden Bridge, which is a town in the north of England. And
right.
there I set up, together with some friends from the art school, a workshop called the Albert Street Workshop. And as you went into the workshop, on the right-hand side, I had my dedicated wall, and I pin up pictures I was taking locally, and I would constantly change these pictures. So it's an evolving exhibition of prints that was in this workshop. And I was there for 5 years and did a body of work. This is all in black and white, because in the 70s, I guess people did black and white work. If you were a serious documentary photographer, color was really at that point the domain of snapshot photography or commercial photography. So it's only in the 70s, the late 70s in particular, that we started to see color photography being taken seriously with people like Eggleston, Stephon Shore, that generation of American photographers.
Right. I wanted to come to this point. Like, why do you think that was the case back then? Like, photography world were divided between black and white and color photography. Why do you think color photography was not accepted at that time?
It's a very good question, and I never really quite understand it, because now, for example,
now it's widespread.
Color, black and white. No one even thinks about it. You can have either. I guess back in the day, if you were a serious photographer, black and white felt like a more serious sort of medium, really, because if you look at the great names in photography, if you look at the Europeans like Henri Cartier-Bresson, or Americans, Robert Frank, Winogrand, they all shot in black and white automatically. There was never really any question of them doing color. And the same Magnum, of course. If you look at the great photographers of Magnum, Kudelka, Cartier-Bresson, they all worked in black and white. So I think there was an association and a tradition where black and white was regarded as the most serious medium. And if you did color, it was for commercial purposes. That's why things like those shows I mentioned in the 70s, William Eggleston at MoMA in 1976, were so groundbreaking and so important.
And later on, you were inspired by William Eggleston as well, and Stephon Shore, people like them.
Yes, because I decided to move from black and white to color in 1982. They just recently had introduced this camera called a Plowbell, which is a medium format camera. It was very easy to use, very small, and a great camera. I got a wide angle one, 55mm, and of course you got a massive negative, and this produced incredibly strong prints, and therefore they're much sharper and the bigger file than the equivalent in black and white.
Right, but like, you got inspired by these two photographers later on in the later part of your career. But while you were starting, who were the photographers that really inspired you while in the initial period of your photography career?
Well, my first inspiration was someone called Tony Ray Jones, who's a very good British photographer who went to study in America and then returned back to England with the knowledge that he'd picked up about American photography and its culture, and did an amazing body of work called A Day Off, which was taken in the late 60s, 67, 68, and then came out eventually as a book in 1982. But sadly, he died very young. He had leukemia. So although his career was very short, it was again very influential. And I think my generation of photographers in the UK were really inspired by Tony Ray Jones. And for me, it sort of taught me what was possible. And it showed me the way for me to photograph in the same, not sort of style, but with the spirit of Tony Ray Jones.
Right. And when it comes to your personal taste in photography, how long does it take for you to realize that this is something that you want to do, like your unique style?
Well, I guess I've developed my style over my career. I'm sort of very well known for using color and flash, and this started in the 80s with a project called The Last Resort.
And by the way, using flash outdoors is a very unique thing. Not many people were doing at that time, I guess.
I guess when I started doing this, it wasn't as widespread as it is now. We often see this combination quite frequently. Even in India, you would see it. So
who were the photographers like they inspired you at that time?
That
was the question.
So in color, there was a guy in England called Peter Mitchell who had a show, the first serious color photography show in the UK in 1979. And then, of course, you have the great American colorists, Stephon Shore, Eggleston, Joel Meyeritz, and also just seeing the postcards of brash, bright colors. I went to a thing called a holiday camp called Butlins in the UK, And there, the postcards were done by a company called John Hind. And they were very brash, they were very saturated colors. And this I found inspirational. And I think when this new camera was introduced, it gave me a chance to sort of really change direction. And that's when I did The Last Resort, which is still probably my best known body of work back in the 80s. And that, of course, was in full color.
Right. So talking about your project Last Resort, I want to talk about that. When it was first exhibited at the London's Serpentine Gallery, right?
Yes, in fact, it was first shown at a gallery in Liverpool called Open Eye, and people in Liverpool know what New Brighton was like. But when it came down to London and the Serpentine, people were sort of taken aback, and I got quite a lot of criticism.
That's the question I wanted to ask you. The critics really condemn the work as cruel and voyeuristic.
Yes, I got quite a lot of criticism. And I guess in the end, I found that the criticism wasn't such a bad thing because it made people look at the work. And, that was part of the objective, is to get the work out there and to create a forum. So in a sense, when I look back, I'm quite glad that it became controversial.
But did it really affected you at that time? Or you think that people were not ready for that kind of work or that style of work at that time?
Well, I think people just didn't like it. And the other thing that happened that was very interesting was that around that time in the late 80s that I started to apply for Magnum. And there was a huge debate within the Magnum about whether I would be suitable for Magnum membership. And the anti-Parr brigade was led by a great photographer called Philip Jones Griffiths. And
you mentioned about him.
Yes, so he tried to stop me being becoming first a nominee and an associate and then eventually a full member. But in the end, I got the 66% vote that you need. You need a 2/3 majority, which in politics is regarded as a landslide. So I did get in. But the actual arguments they had when they were debating my work are really legendary. I wasn't there, but I've heard that were very vicious and shouting and screaming. And again, I guess I'm quite glad that I caused so much controversy. And I'd say since then, Magnum's doors of and the type of photographer they've taken on has really widened. So I think that sort of whole episode with debating my work has opened the doors to other photographers that wouldn't previously have got in. So I think in the end, it was a good thing for Magnum.
Right. And you had a little bit of feud with Henri Cartier-Bresson as well. He was
Indeed.
Like, he did not like your work, in the initial part of your career. How did you handle all that criticism at that time? It is very easy for you to say it now when you look back to those times. But what was you going through at that time? How did you take all that criticism wholeheartedly?
Well, what happened was I did a show in 1992 called Small World, where I looked at the world of tourism. And Cartier-Bresson showed up to the opening. He didn't like the work. And that night he sent me a fax saying, I don't know much about you, but it appears you come from a different planet. And I returned saying, I understand how you feel, but please don't shoot the messenger. And interestingly, many years later, last year, we did an exhibition together at the Cartier-Bresson Foundation. Of course, Cartier-Bresson had died. But after that encounter, his wife, Martine Frank, had invited me around for lunch. And we got on, we made up, and we were fine together. So in last year, they found a film that Cartier-Bresson had made in the UK. And the main subjects that he'd chosen to photograph, and they made the film from his photographs, was Northern Industry and Blackpool. And Francois Habel, who's the director of the Cartier-Bresson Foundation, said, why don't you choose some pictures of your own from Blackpool and from Northern Industry? And we put these two sets of work together. And the exhibition was called Reconciliation. So it's my chance really to sort of demonstrate how in the end we got on fine. And when you look at the two bodies of work, the sort of things that we were interested in are very similar.
Very similar, yeah. There are very striking similarities. Yes.
Yes, there's a lot of similarities. If we went to factories, we would, look at posters on the walls. We'd look at the women concentrating. There was many similarities. So in the end, apart from the fact that I'm in color and he's in black and white, there isn't so much difference.
So do you think that was a personal grudge as well, somewhere down the line, just because you were doing photography in color?
Well,
and
it
he did
wasn't
not
just
like
the
it.
color. I guess it's because my pictures became almost like a critique of society.
Hmm.
Previously when I worked in, oh, sorry,
No problem.
previously, previously when I worked in black and white, it was almost like a sort of celebration of society. And then when I
Right,
turned to color, it became more of a critique. And I
right.
think that's the big difference. And it's because it was a critique that people in Magnum found it somewhat offensive.
Mm, right, right. So I was going through one of your interviews, and you said in one of your interviews, and I'm quoting you, that we get so used to seeing things, we almost forget to understand how strange everyday life is. So I think part of my job is to try and highlight the more surreal aspects of beach life and daily life and illustrate that through photography. So I want to ask you, why do you think that happens to us, especially in the context of today's day and age? Do you think it happens because we are constantly in a hurry that we don't notice things around us? Or in general, our attention span has really decreased? What do you think is the case?
I think you're right. I mean, I agree with my own quote. How about that? That
That's great.
we often don't see the things that are interesting because we're too familiar with them. But also,
Right.
I'm very aware of being a documentary photographer, and
Mm.
I'm interested in showing things as society changes. I mean, the biggest thing that's happened in the last 20 years has been the introduction of the
Cell phone.
smartphone and taking
Right.
selfies.
Right.
And I did a book which is in the shape of a smartphone called Death by Selfie, and I did
Right.
that because I looked up on Wikipedia
Mm.
the death by selfie
While taking selfies. Right.
statistics, and I found out that in India more people had died from taking selfies than anywhere else in the world.
Oh
And
God.
so people falling off cliffs, people falling into trains. And
Trains. Yes.
I assume, therefore, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, that more selfies are taken in India than anywhere else because the only population that would match it is China. And China's figures for death by selfie were very small. So I
Mm.
came to India especially to take pictures of people doing selfies. And
Mm.
many of these are in this book called Death by Selfie. So
Okay.
I'm afraid that's one thing that India is known for. It's dangerous to take selfies. You might get killed.
Right. Right. That's true. That's true. Mm. But with the advent of social media as well, like people are so busy in their phones these days. I'm assuming what was the case at that time, like when you were doing photography. So how do you see, like, what was the difference? Because at that time there was no cell phones and there was no social media, but still you saw that that particular thing in the society at that time as well.
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the other thing I did was to do in the 80s, the late 80s, I was photographing people in supermarkets.
Right.
And, that's not the traditional place where a photographer would go. So I find it very interesting to think about people shopping, people about being consumers. And I think these things are regarded generally as a bit boring. But
Right.
actually, when you look back now on the 80s and my pictures in supermarkets or people
Mm.
filling up their car with petrol, they're interesting because all the graphics have changed, people's clothes have changed. There was
Mm.
no smartphones, of course. And
Right.
these sort of small details are really what make documentary work so interesting.
Right. That's true. That's true. So, you talked about documentary photography. I have this question that is related to documentary photography, and I think you're a perfect person to answer this question. You see, as a documentary photographer, it's our primary job to take photographs in a very candid and spontaneous manner, right? It's the part of a
Correct. I
documentary
wouldn't
photographer.
argue with that.
Yeah. So my question is, and it's the dilemma that I face every now and then, and I always ask this question to myself: that do you think sometimes in the process of doing that, doing candid and spontaneous shots, sometimes we cross the limit of privacy with other people? Like we start pointing out cameras in front of people, and we don't ask for like consent of them. Sometimes, do you think that happens? And if yes, then how do you balance it out in with your work?
Well, for me, if someone's out in the public place, like on the street or
Right.
or anywhere like that, I think they're fair game to photograph them. And
Mm.
the secret and the job for me is to photograph them without them looking at the camera.
Mm.
Usually, the moment someone looks at the camera in a sort of candid shot, it gets ruined. And then,
Right.
of course, there's always the portrait. I do a lot of portraits as well,
Mm.
and that's
Mm.
more like a formal thing where you go up to someone, you say, I'd like to do your portrait. They agree.
Right.
And that is, if you like, that's a method of consent.
Uh,
But, you know, I think the problem might arise. You know, I've done a lot of work on beaches, starting with the last resort and going through and doing more. I think the problem there is if you photograph kids now without the permission from the parents, then you're likely to get in trouble. So that's one thing I would draw the line at. Other than that, if it's adults, even if they're on the beach or if they're on the street, I would just take the picture.
You don't think about like all these things that much. Taking
No,
consent.
I just do it. I never have a model release. And you know, if I'm photographing a scene, you know, near the beach or in the town, there's often 20, 10, you know, a lot of people in the picture. You couldn't go and ask everybody. It'd just be impossible.
Right.
You'd never get the picture. And in the end, you know, our jobs here are to try and take good pictures, and good pictures are very difficult to attain. You know, I take more bad pictures than most photographers because I do a lot of pictures, and most of them are bad. You know, if I get 6 good shots a year, I'm very happy.
Oh, that's
how many shots a year do you take that are good?
I don't know.
I'm gonna start
number is very
interviewing you now.
less.
Sorry,
No,
much less.
Much less. I'm into black and white photography. Like,
Right.
I'm
Okay.
not interested
Have you
in
never
color
thought about doing color?
Sometimes every now and then, but black and white is something that really, you know, intrigues me, that really excites me. So I keep my work to black and white.
Okay. And do you do a lot of assignments and commissions?
Yeah, sometimes. As far as my commercial photography is concerned, I shoot for like hotels but that's commercial photography. I like street photography, and fine art black and white photography, something that I really like. One of my photographs was exhibited at International Center of Photography in New York in 2020.
Oh, good. Right. Nice.
Then 3 of my photographs exhibited at the Stainless Gallery in New Delhi. So yeah, that's something.
And these are portraits, is that right?
Not really, not portraits, but these are like very, you know, artistic sort of photography, black and white, and you know, something like that. Not portraits. Although I've done portraits as well, but
okay. Good to hear.
Thank you so much. So coming back to the documentary photography thing, right? I have seen your work, and just by looking at the images, I can say that you go very up close to people while you're shooting. You know, you present people in a very close-up manner. How do you you know, take care of this thing that you're not making other people conscious? Because as soon as people become conscious, they start acting in a different manner. They start acting abnormally. How do you take care of that?
Well, if I'm photographing someone's hand or someone's face, which I often did with the macro lens and the ring flash, I would have asked permission to do that. And they would think it's a very bizarre request. And, you know, I'd make a joke about this and come in and do it. If I'm photographing someone and I don't really want them to know, then I turn my body away from them and then set the shot up, and then swing around, take it, and then go back again. And then I don't look at the person, because if you look at the person with a sort of guilty face, you're almost acknowledging that you've done something that you shouldn't have done. So as I don't believe it's something wrong to do, I would just go on and take the picture. And sometimes people just ignore you, and sometimes people just walk away. You know, you have to be prepared for different reactions all the time. And then sometimes people get very cross, and that's an occupational hazard of being a photographer. You know, some people don't like being photographed. They think it's illegal to photograph in the street.
Right.
And I imagine, as in the UK, in India, it's not illegal. You're not breaking the law if you photograph someone on the street. Is that correct?
Right. People do that every now and then. There is no problem. Yeah. And I've seen that majority of people on the streets, they are not concerned about you photographing them that much. Like they take this seriously. And not many people are ready to confront you at that time.
That's right. Yes. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a confrontation in India ever.
Right.
People are very gentle, very laid back. It's a great place to photograph. And you're very lucky. You know, you live in one of the most photogenic countries in the world.
That's true.
It's such a crazy, you know, if you go to the old towns, you know, Old Delhi or the center of Mumbai.
Old Delhi is very new to me.
Oh, is it? Right.
Yeah, just
but
tomorrow.
I bet you don't photograph there because it's too familiar.
No, every now and then you see like so many different shots that there, so much happening at the same time. Have you been to Varanasi as well in India?
Do you know, it's the one place that I've never been to. In fact, just before COVID, our next trip to India, which would have been in 2021 or 2020, Varanasi was one of the places we were going to go to. I mean, I'm almost scared to go there because you see so many photographs of Varanasi. It obviously is a very photogenic place.
Yes,
And
true.
the trouble is when it's so strong visually, it's quite difficult to take pictures that are different from other people's.
That's true. That's true.
Excuse me, I'm having a cough.
No problem. No problem. Please. Yeah, that's true.
Have you
Yeah.
photographed there?
No, I'm still to go there. But
Really?
like you said, whatever, how photographs that I see of Varanasi on social media and internet, majority of them are like similar, quite similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very hard to, click different photographs there,
That's
I
right.
guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll try my best to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's this question that I want to ask you. You said in one of your interview, and I'm quoting you, that you were interested in the ambiguity and contradictions of your surrounding and society, and you wanted to convey that through photography. So I wanted to ask you, what was that contradicting thing that you know that you were seeing in the photographs of other people, in your time? And do you think that other photographers are like presenting the world around you in a different light, and you did not like that? What was the case when you said
No,
that?
I think this best applies when I think about my relationship to the UK.
Right.
This is the country that I'm from, and therefore, inevitably, I have a very strong like of it. But at the same time, I'm pretty cross about many aspects of British bigotry, the fact that we've left Europe, and these sort of contradictions. It's a love-hate relationship that I have with this country, and that's what I can try and express through photography. So, I can sort of build ambiguity into the pictures. Now, don't ask me
Right.
how I can do that,
No, no.
but it's something that sort of happens quite frequently. And I think for me, it means that when people look at my photographs, they'll either laugh or cry.
Mm.
So I'm not telling people how to respond. I'm trying to make a very strong picture, good formal composition, strong colors, and then people can interpret it how they like. And if you can empathize with what's in the picture,
Right.
it could go both ways. So that's a sort of a brief explanation of what I'm trying to do. The best way to do this, of course, is to look at the pictures,
Mm.
and
And
you can go to my site and you can look at all the books. I've done over 100 books. You can see inside them. You can
right.
see recent work. You can see lots of blogs,
Right.
including things written about India. So
Mhm.
yes, there's plenty of opportunity to sort of look at that contradiction that I'm talking about.
And does it happen like naturally to you?
Yes, it does, because I think a picture should have a twist to it. It's not just sort of one harmonious buzz like a pictorial picture of,
Right.
say, a church in a sunset. I'm trying to introduce different edges and different sort of perspectives within the
Mm.
same picture. I mean, it's
Right.
not easy to do, and that's why, photography is still so difficult. But,
Right.
I enjoy that challenge of trying to do that.
Mhm. And what about the technical aspect of photography? Do you think learning the technical aspect of photography is more important than the intuitive aspect of photography? What do you think about that?
Well, these days, the cameras are so brilliant, you don't really have to study the sort of technical aspects. I mean, when I was at college, back in the 70s, you really had to understand f-stops and what it's all about. I now actually just have my camera on program. I don't even, and then I just check the file on the back of the camera, see if it's looking good. I might adjust it, up or down a bit, but basically I just let the camera do the work. My
Mhm.
job is to point the camera at the right subject and try and get the right moment. So
Mhm.
I let the camera do the rest.
Mm. Mm. But still, I want to. Yeah, please go on if you're trying to say
Yeah, I
something.
was going to say that, I now have a whole team of people that, so after I've done a shot, a shoot, we load it onto the computer, I make a selection, and then we
Mhm.
print out those pictures, not in the lab itself, not in my studio, but we send them to a lab and they send back, 10/8 prints, which are
Okay.
sort of, they're very cheap, they're 45p each. So about a rupee each, and it's from those that we actually make the selection. They do all the files, they load up the pictures, they adjust the Photoshop and everything. I've never processed a file in my life. I wouldn't even know where to start. So I have a team of people that help me do that.
You don't like editing?
Oh, I like editing. No, I do the editing first on the computer, and then I do the second layer of editing from the prints that we've ordered from the lab.
Right.
And it's from that I decide which pictures go onto the Magnum site and which pictures are regarded as total rejects.
Right. But I wanted to ask you that how important it is to learn photography like formally, to have like formal training in photography, or do you think if a person is like teaching himself photography by himself, that works best? What do you think?
Well, I think I've nothing against photographic education, but when you look back at the history of photography, most of the great names that we know are actually never taught. So that to me is quite interesting. But I still think there's a good case for doing. I've done a lot of teaching in my time. At great colleges like Newport and Farnham here in the UK, and there is a case to try and give people the opportunity to develop their vision and try and become a photographer in their own right. It's not an easy thing to do. People think photography is very easy because taking a picture means picking up a camera and pressing a button. But
yeah, that's what a lot of my friends have told me. That what is it so hard about photography? You just have to press a button. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I hope you've told them back that becoming a good photographer with their own vision in their pictures is extremely difficult.
Forget about being a good photographer. I just give my camera to them, set it to manual, and they just cannot even handle the basic thing of photography.
There you go.
That's what I do. I just change the shutter speed and ISO and all that. I just give my camera to them.
That's a good idea. Yeah. No, I like that. Very good.
Yeah. So, what about exhibitions? Like, where was your first exhibition?
My first exhibition would have been in Manchester when I was at college. I did an exhibition in a subway somewhere.
I just want to interrupt you here. Do you try and reach out to museums and galleries, or what is the process exactly like?
Well, a lot of them come to me, and a lot of them come to me via Magnum. I have 2 touring exhibitions with Magnum, so there's always a Martin Parr show on somewhere in the world, usually 2 or 3 at the same time. I have a person dedicated in my studio also for looking after the exhibitions. And, we send the prints, we negotiate the fees, whatever is required, making a selection. And, as I say, there's always a Martin Parr show somewhere in the world.
And when it's happening in India?
I haven't had a big show in India yet. I've had a few incursions at my gallery in Delhi, but, I've not had a proper big show yet. It's something I'd love to do, of course.
Right.
But, I can't really go to the museums there. I have to wait to be invited. That may never happen.
It will happen. It can happen for sure. Do you see any problem, like, as far as contemporary photography is concerned, any issues that you see?
No, not really. I mean, I think the world of photography has opened up. The whole idea of selling prints has really taken off in the last 20 years. There's been a revival of people doing photographic books. Together with a friend of mine called Jerry Badger, we did 3 books about the history of photo books, which have been very well received. I mean, in India now, of course, we see books being published. That's something that didn't really happen 20 years ago. So, I think, the world of photography is in good shape. I mean, people say, well, what the problem is that anyone can do it now. But if you look at Instagram, you'll find out that most people can't do it properly. And that's why they come to, photographers, professional photographers, named photographers, to look at their Instagram sort of lead, because I guess people know that you've done it seriously.
Right. I was just reminding you of that. You also mentioned somewhere that photography is a great democratizer.
Yes.
So
I mean, I like the fact that I can have a picture hanging in the Tate Gallery or in, a big museum, and the same picture can be printed on a T-shirt. That I think is a very democratic side of photography, the high and low culture. And also anyone can be a photographer. We're all photographers. We've all got phones. We all take pictures. Some people choose to sort of do it more seriously than others. But, that's the sort of it's the most widely applied art form on the planet
Mm,
because everyone's got a camera in their
right.
smartphone.
But when you say that very few people choose to do it like seriously, what do you exactly mean by when you say that seriously? What is
Well,
does
I'd say seriously is when someone's on a project that has some sort of formation, has some kind of drive, some kind of idea, some kind of concept, that can be coming out, and displayed in Instagram or in someone doing their own book. That's what I mean by a serious project.
And how do you differentiate between a good photograph and a bad photograph? If you think there is like something like bad photograph.
Well, there are many bad photographs. There are many more bad photographs than good ones. And I
Mm,
take a lot of them as myself. I do a lot of bad pictures too. I mean, a good photograph just sort of sings off the page. It just has a sort of quality to it. Now, if I understood how to take a good photograph, I would just
You'll
stop
do it
being a photographer. It's still a
right.
mystery to me why some things work and some things don't.
Mm,
So that's the thing that drives me forward. I hope every day I go out with my camera that I can get a picture that is one of those best 6 of the year. But
right.
basically, most of the time, it doesn't happen.
Mm. And I think that's the case with every art form. Yeah, you don't understand that secret sauce is,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's what makes it special.
Well, you've got to be obsessed. Unless you're obsessed, you may as well not
Mm,
bother.
right, right. That's true. That's true. But I want to ask you, do you think what according to you is like more important as far as photography is concerned, the aesthetic value of it or the storytelling aspect of photographs?
Well, I think it's a bit of both, really. I mean, the ideal picture has the aesthetics, the strong composition, and it also has a message as well. So, I think you need both of those elements in a good picture.
Hmm. And how much part do you think editing plays when it comes to like photography?
Well, I
Where do
mean,
you?
editing's important. You have to get the right edit. You have to make sure that when you're putting a body of work together, whether it's a book or an exhibition, the purpose of the show is there for people to see. Sometimes we need pictures that aren't so strong because they're narrative. They have something in them that is part of the whole thing that you're trying to show. So you have to balance between the strong pictures and the ones that show the narrative.
Hmm, hmm. Okay. And what is it that you would like to tell young photographers, young aspiring photographers of today?
Well, first off, unless you're obsessed, don't bother. And if you want to become a famous photographer, also don't bother because the people that really succeed are the people that are just going to do it anyway. If your desire is just to be a famous photographer, it ain't going to work. So it's the people that sort of just do it because they have to do it. They're the photographers that are going to be successful.
But in today's day and age, like where marketing is at like all-time high, how much do you think marketing plays an important role in photography? And how
Well,
one should do you think one should care about marketing aspect of it?
yes, you have to
And
in a sense, but
because
it's best
everybody
if you
is doing
like
that.
to get someone to sort of market it on your behalf, whether
Mhm.
it's a friend, an agent, or something like that. People will see the work, and if they like it, then you're likely to get sort of some kind of recognition. And it's the people that don't go out just looking for recognition that get the recognition, if you understand what I mean.
Can you please explain it like again?
No, it's the people that don't care about the recognition that normally are
And
the better photographers. And
right.
they're the
Okay.
ones ultimately that will get the recognition.
Okay. I get it now. I get it. But in a way, it's important, like to market your work because everybody is doing that, and everybody is like they're very aggressive about marketing these days. People.
Yeah, I think you have to understand a bit of that, but you need to find the right person, whether it's an agent or a gallery.
Mhm.
A gallery is the ideal mechanism, really. That they can do the marketing for you, and you can just go out and still take pictures.
Right. And is it good to like contact galleries and get in touch with them to showcase your
Yes,
work?
when your work is sort of developed, and
Okay.
I don't know when that moment is, but when it sort of feels when you show it to people and they like it and it
Mm.
sings off the page, I guess that's the time to go and go and try and find a gallery. But don't do it too soon. Often people make the mistake of trying to find a gallery well before they're suited to do that.
So before doing this session, I put some Instagram stories on Instagram asking people to send in their questions as well.
Hmm.
So there are few audience questions that I wanted to address here as well.
Okay.
So yeah, this question is from a person in India. His username is Adashar. Ashutosh Das Sharma is his name, and the question is: I do photography as a hobby, not at all as an earning source. Now, whatever photographs I think are decently good, I post them on Instagram. That's all I do with my work. My question is: supposing I remove Instagram from the equation, what should I be doing rather? If I want to advance my hobby into serious photography, just posting on Instagram is never going to take you anywhere, right? So,
Well, he's not right. He's not entirely correct there, because if his pictures are good, he's going to get a good following on Instagram. So I don't know how much his following is.
mhm,
And then I guess people like this should attend workshops. They should try and meet photographers, try and meet the gatekeepers, the people that sort of, control photography. I guess that's part of what you have to do.
mm,
That's seemingly contradictory to what I said before,
right,
but yeah, keep taking the pictures. Don't worry about don't worry about getting recognition. It'll come if you're any good.
right, right. So that
Plus, you've
was the
got a
question.
website. As well as Instagram, you need a website
You need a
where we can
website,
see the
right?
best of his work. Yeah.
Right. That's true. That's true. So there's another question, and it's a very direct question to you. It's by Yukta Taneja from India. How does one become a Magnum photographer?
You become a Magnum photographer very simply by taking amazing pictures and then applying. And if your pictures are that good, they will be seriously considered. I mean, we've got Sohrab Hura recently become a member of Magnum, so I'm sure many of your listeners or viewers will have seen his work. He's a very good photographer, very individual. He did his own books. It really works.
Mhm. But what's the process like of reaching out to
Well,
Magnum?
every year, if you go to the Magnum site, you'll see there's a way of applying, and we have maybe 500 people apply every year. All these folios are viewed by photographers in the different offices, and then any that look serious that go forward to the AGM, which is always in late June, and there people discuss the work and vote on it. And if you get 50% of the votes from the photographers, you become a nominee, which is the first level of membership.
Right. And what are the qualities that they see in the photographer or the photographs, so to speak?
They're looking to see, individual work with, that sort of personal vision. We're looking to see that over maybe 2 or 3 projects, so it's not just one. And when you see good work, you know it, you recognize it.
Mm,
So it's very easy for us to sort of spot who looks full of potential.
mm. And would you also advise young photographers to work on long-term projects and long projects instead of taking like single shot images?
Oh yeah, I think you have to have a project that makes some sense, that builds up a body of work, that makes a bigger statement about one particular thing. You can't
Mm,
just do odd snapshots here and there. It's not good enough. The best
right.
way to really develop as a photographer is to have one theme that you try and explore and do the best you can within that framework.
Hmm. Okay. And for you, your laboratory was like the beaches, right? You kept on
Sorry?
shooting your
Oh
laboratory.
yeah.
You said that your laboratory was beaches. You tried
Well,
every new technique and everything on the right at the beach.
I have explored the beach in many different ways. I started in black and white, then I went to
Mhm.
medium format color, then I did the macro lens, and now I'm using a telephoto. So,
Right.
the beach has been my experimental lab.
Experimental
So,
lab.
yes, so
Mm.
it's been very
And
good for me. And
and
of
and
course,
do you,
Indian beaches are crazy as well. I've photographed many. I've been to
right.
Goa many times. I love to see the Indians at play. Uh,
Uh,
you know, and of course, I love the fact that the women always go in fully dressed, and the men
right.
go in with their trunks on.
And do you
And
think?
watching, women, fall over in the sea and
Right.
hilariously laughing away is a great experience in India.
And do you think Indians are like easy to go? Like it's they're comfortable when you're shooting them on beaches.
Well, they don't really know that I'm just photographing them. I'm photographing everything and everybody.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah,
Got it.
I mean, I love photographing on Indian beaches.
Mm, mm. So like you said, just right now that beaches were like your laboratory and your experimental ground.
Hmm.
Do you think every photographer should have that one place or one thing where
Well, they
they
have to
can
have a
go.
theme, they have to have a concept, they have to have an idea as to what they're photographing and to explore that and make it their own. So yes.
And do you think a photographer finds his or her solace in that particular place as well?
Well, yeah. I mean, you need to find the subject matter that really inspires you. And in India, you're not short of subjects because it's such a crazy photogenic country. It's almost a disadvantage for you guys because it's so photogenic. It makes it easier to take half decent picture.
But how important it is to slow down a bit, because when you are in a rut to click photographs every now and then, do you think that that really affects your senses and that really affects your attention as well? So sometimes you have to
I don't
slow down
believe in slowing down. I believe in accelerating.
Okay.
And doing more work and making the whole project better.
But don't you think in the long run it really affects with your creativity as well? You don't like to take breaks at all?
No, you have to have a break. I mean, I'm going to go out and photograph today. There's a big horse race meeting just down the road, which I'm going to go to. I don't really believe in breaks. If you're obsessed, you don't have breaks. You just keep going.
So there's this another question by this photographer called Jim. What are your thoughts on AI photography and how it could affect the genre, artificial intelligence? That's a
Well, I've just been looking at Michael Christopher Brown, who's posted some pictures on Instagram where he's submitted files and he got the AI to sort of produce these sort of strong pictures. In the end, I mean, that's never going to be something that I would even consider doing. So I don't believe in photoshopping things in and out. You cannot in the end beat a whole proper picture taken one lens, with all the mystery that involves. That's what you need. You can't construct pictures. Of course, there's going to be commercial outlets for such things, but in the end, we want the pure photograph.
But don't you think that's a very idealistic approach, idealistic viewpoint of looking at the world? Do you think we can stop AI from coming into photography full time?
No, you can't stop it. You can just make it better. You can do better than AI, basically, because the quirks of a good picture would be impossible to define.
Right. True. So there are three more questions. This question is by Ajay Parvati, and the question is, what is photography to you? How would you define
It's everything. It's my life. So that's the answer.
Simple and straightforward. Yeah. So another question is by Achal Swapnil. What are your thoughts on NFT dealings of photos and paintings?
Yeah, I mean, Magnum have done a little bit of dabbling with NFTs, and I participated in that. But for me, it's not really the thing I'm going to be doing much of. I think NFTs have gone down. The initial sort of excitement about them all has sort of been somewhat sort of, ended because the prices have fallen. The cryptocurrencies are in trouble. So, in the end, it's not something I'll be doing.
But do you understand the concepts and the whole process of NFTs and all? Because I
understand it, but I don't really think much of it.
Okay. Got it. So the last question is importance of philosophy and writing in photography.
I do blogs. People write about my work, which is nice. But in the end, it's the photograph that really counts, on its own, naked. Does it work? Do the pictures come together? We're talking about a series of pictures, not just one. And, that's a very difficult thing to achieve, to make that work. So I'm not particularly interested, in the philosophy of photography. I'm interested in just going out there and doing it. Okay,
not just in the philosophy of photography, but for philosophy in general. Are you interested in understanding?
Not overly, no. That's too intellectual for me.
Okay.
I'm a very intuitive person. I want to go out there and do it.
You're very intuitive. So you don't focus too much into the technical aspect of photography, because I am like that. I do photography, but I don't understand the technical aspect of photography that much, but I know how to do the work.
Yeah, well, I know how it works, but I have, as I mentioned before, people that help me do it, so I don't have to process files. I don't get bogged down with that. Remember, I run a foundation here in the UK, Martin Parr Foundation, which is in Bristol. Here we collect work, we showcase work. We support emerging photographers. So if any of you lot are coming to the UK, please come and visit us. Or you
Sure.
can go online and subscribe to our newsletter to see what we're up to.
I'll definitely look up to that.
And also
So-
we sell photographic books.
Right.
We have a big shop. Most of these books are signed by the photographers, something you wouldn't get in most other places. So, and we post to India, no problem.
Yeah. And we are definitely going to put the links, in the description of our
Right.
video as well on YouTube.
Okay,
That'll-
good.
will do. Yeah, sure. So there's this last question that I want to ask you. And
Okay.
this is like personal question that I really wanted to ask you, that how to be self-critical of your work, like how to know that you're doing good work, and how to understand and how to realize that, okay, there are flaws in your work, how to be because at times we think that our work is great and our work is good, but how to see your work in a very critical manner so that you can improve yourself over a period of
Well,
time.
it's very difficult for me to say to someone how to do that. But yeah, most people think their work is better than it really is.
Right.
So the first thing to do is to sort of be more sober about your achievements. And you look at your pictures and you think these are the 2 or 3 best ones. You have to try and understand and analyze why they work, why they're interesting, and go out and take more pictures like that. So you have to, if you like, learn from the mistakes that you've made and also from your achievements.
But let's say when you don't have like people around you to talk about photography, or you don't have people to like, to whom you can send your work to critique, then how
Well, you have to go and do a workshop. There are many workshops in India. You have to meet photographers that are running the workshops. They've obviously got a lot of information, a lot of understanding of how photography works. So you have to expose yourself to things like that to really sort of get feedback on how good or bad your work is.
Okay, got it. And there's this interesting question that I want to ask you. Do you think you are an introverted person or an extroverted person?
Oh, extrovert or introvert?
You.
I guess a bit of both, really. I mean, when you're out there photographing, you often meet a lot of people. You meet your subjects. I always have interesting chats with them. It's fun being a photographer. You meet people, you get out there, you see what's going on in the world.
And can you become a good and famous photographer if you're an introvert? Do you think that can happen?
It's possible, yeah. Anything's possible.
Great. It was lovely talking to you. If there is anything that you want to say or that you want to
No, I'm
tell
good.
the audience.
I'm good. Yeah.
It's really amazing talking to you.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And it really means
Cheers.
a lot to me.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Take care.